This topic that we're going to be discussing, building the net zero workforce, always attracts a good number of people in the room and online, because people like Jonathan Hart-Smith can help you find the next job. That's true, isn't it, Jonathan? That's how it is. Jonathan, you're from ESG Rec, the recruitment professionals, and we are talking building the net zero workforce. If we don't have time for questions during or at the end, I know, Jonathan, you can hang around afterwards, can't you, and have a conversation. But let's get rid of me and welcome Jonathan to the stage.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you for having me. So I thought I had 30 minutes, apparently it's only 25, so if I rattle through some of this, I apologise. So I want to start talking about building the net zero workforce, and I've picked 2050 because in Europe, 2050 is the date we keep talking about to get to net zero. But any good presentation should start with some holiday snaps. Does anyone know where this is? Sorry? It's the Grand Canyon. So you know it better than me. But why I put this up is, A, I went there and I wanted an excuse to show you my holiday snaps. But B, also, I think net zero can feel like you're standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon. It is vast, it is huge, it makes you feel tiny. When you think about what has to be achieved in a relatively short time frame, it can be quite awesome, and not in terms of the kind of like awesome kind of way. It's more it's quite scary. And it was my son's 18th birthday the other week, and it was really nice. He's now going off to university, doing all those things that 18-year-olds do, and so we've an equal mix of pride, but also heartbreak that my eldest is now leaving home. But it got me thinking about when I was 18, and because he's actually going off to the same university I went to as well, so I kind of can imagine all the cool stuff he's going to do. And just for the record here, I am 48, so it was 30 years ago. Looking around the room, I'm not going to name any names or kind of guess anybody's ages, but I think there's probably some of you out here as well that are a similar age. And just for 1 second, I want you to try and think back to when you were 18. Because for me, it's like a very vivid memory. I remember it's the first time, you got your freedom, you can drive, go to the pub legally, but it's that long summer. I don't know if you remember that amazing summer, you being free and nothing to do, no homework, nothing. It's great. But that has gone by like that. I remember it so vividly, and it's gone by like that. And if we start to think about the time we've got to 2050, it's actually shorter for me than that time frame. And so when we start thinking about building the net zero workforce, it's quite easy to think, oh, well, we've got time to do that, it's 2050, but it will be upon us before we know it. And it's not really the workforce of the future, it's the workforce for now, really, because to achieve those goals, we've actually got to do the work now. And so thinking about jobs and this net zero workforce, focusing on green jobs for a second, there's an undeniable demand. So by 2030, there's going to be at least 100,000 jobs required in offshore wind. And the predictions are as well something like 1.4 million jobs, 14 million jobs in clean energy, with another 16 million for areas that are carbon intensive switching to low carbon alternatives. So that's 30 million jobs just by 2030. And to give that some sort of visual context around that, Greater London, if you took 2.5 times Greater London, that's about that number. So everybody you bumped into outside because you couldn't get on the tube, they will all be working in clean energy or low carbon jobs. And everywhere you turn, they would be doing that. So it's a huge number. And it's not just clean energy as well, it's not just engineering, it's more than engineering. Everybody in this room is probably doing something that is connected with trying to achieve that net zero goal. So there are jobs in ESG reporting. Talked to a lot of people today about that. There's jobs in the circular economy. There's jobs in packaging. There's jobs in marketing, sales, even recruitment. So it's even keeping me employed. But the point I'm trying to make is net zero at the moment has been getting a bit of a kicking in the media, and it has been for the last few months. But I think, those in this room, I'm preaching to the converted, but it's up to us really to try and make sure that we really, really explain that net zero is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to try and, get the planet on the right track, but it's also an opportunity for us from a growth perspective as individuals, but also for business. And we should try to help people stop thinking about it as a problem and actually start to think about it as an opportunity for us to develop. So what I want to talk about today is about building this workforce. I've put over the future here, but actually it's not the future, it's the workforce of now. And what I'd like you to take away from today is, I've been doing recruitment now for a quarter of a century, long time. What I want you to go away from today is with some practical things about how to go about really building your workforce, whether it's net zero or actually whether it's anything within your business, anything that you are doing in recruitment to try and build your teams or build your organisations. Some of the things I talk about today will be really, really applicable. So we are going to talk mainly around sustainability, but actually most of this you can apply elsewhere. So what I want you to take away from today is something practical. So the process you're going to follow whenever you start to hire for somebody is understanding your own needs, understanding the needs of the people that you are going to try and attract, how you position your organisation as one that would be an attractive place, and then what your process is for actually going through getting people to originally apply through to actually getting them started. So let's focus first on understanding your needs. So we handle lots and lots of jobs, and so often the first thing that hits us is a job description. If you are going through the recruitment process, I'd urge you to look at the job description you're using, because sustainability in the ESG sector has changed at a pace of knots. So the job description that you're looking at now for that last person that you hired 2-3 years ago might not be relevant anymore. It might have really, really changed. So go and have a look at that job description and see if it's still current, see if it's still relevant. And then you can get help on this as well. You can always ask for help from somebody to go and take a look at that. Use your TA team, use somebody like us, but then also have a think about what character traits you want this person to have as well when they join you, because again, one of the biggest challenges that we find that CSOs have is getting the combination of technical skills and interpersonal skills that they need in that job for the person that they're hiring for. It's so underestimated, the requirements for the ability to be able to influence, because oftentimes people within your organisation maybe don't want, not because they don't believe in sustainability, but they don't want the hassle of doing what you're asking them to do. So being able to convince them and work on that is really, really important. So what personality traits do you need? And what working arrangements do you need as well? Are those people going to be based in your office? Do you want them field based? Those sorts of practical things that are quite useful, really. So I haven't got my glasses on, I can't see what it says here. So the next thing is, do these skills exist? And 99% of the time they do exist, but they don't always exist in the combinations that you're looking for. So we've already talked about technical skills and those interpersonal skills, but you might also need somebody who's really, really technically competent and has got great sales skills. Those people are rarer. So when you're looking for the combinations of skills, thank you very much for making that bigger. That's something that's really, really vital. So do those skills exist in combination? And then where are these people? Where are they based? Are they, if you're based in London, for example, if actually you're trying to attract a particular skill set and they're all based in Bristol, do you need to work remotely, or actually do you have enough of a demand that actually you might want to open a Bristol office? And then the next one is, do you have the budget? And this one's really, really key, because we have gone through the recruitment process with companies many, many times for them to get to the end of the process and realise that they don't have the sign-off, or what they really are looking for, they have unrealistic expectations about what the salaries they might have to pay to get that skill set into their business. So they'll start to go through that process, want to offer somebody, and realise they actually can't afford what they really want. So if you have that idea at the very beginning, you will know what you can afford, and also those skill sets that you're looking for, something you might need to compromise on. So think about your budget, and you can do some benchmarking on that. Again, organisations like ours will do that. Your talent acquisition team will be able to do that for you as well. And then think about who else is hiring, who you're competing with, how you're going to position yourself to compete with those organisations. So, what's your workforce looking for? Last year I stood on this stage and I was really, really confident about what the next year was going to look like for sustainability professionals, and I was right for about 4 months. And then the world just changed. So I'm not going to tell you what they're looking for in 2050. But what I can tell you is what people are looking for at the moment, because we've just done a piece of research around asking people who are actively looking for work what's important to them. And this data is based on their feedback. So there's a whole load of stuff on here which is really small and difficult to see, but I'm going to summarise this. The 3 top things that people said that they were looking for if they were actively looking for a job at the moment in sustainability or ESG were more money. Undoubtedly, everybody is purpose-driven, right, in this area, but we are not immune. Nobody is immune to the increasing cost of living. And so money is, for one of the first times, becoming one of the main motivating factors why people are looking for a new job. Flexibility probably comes no surprise. That's been really, really hot in terms of what people have been looking for a long time. And then training and development. So those are the top 3 in order that people said they were looking for. So when you're thinking about tackling that and positioning your organisation, you really want to think about what is that value proposition to lean into that. So the millennial and Gen Z workforce are looking for this trifecta of this perfect thing of money, they're looking for flexibility, and they're looking for meaning. And so if you can position those about how you talk about your organisation, chances are you're going to pick up the best, or certainly a greater chance of getting the biggest workforce. And the reason I mention millennials and Gen Z is because by 2030, they're going to make up 74% of the global workforce. So I know I'm not in that category, grey and losing my hair. But a lot of people are. And so if you're actually looking to build that team, you need to think about what's going to be appealing to them. So if you can get those in your regular positioning and talking about your organisation and do it all the time, that will help you attract those people, even when you're not hiring. And one of the things, I've mentioned green hushing here, because a lot of companies at the moment, not all, but many, are not talking as much about what they do. And if they are purpose-driven and they are authentic, they will keep doing that, or you'd hope they keep doing it. But I can guarantee you, if you stop doing it, that will get noticed. And that's really, what we're talking about. Keep communicating about what you're doing. So moving on from that into the actual candidate experience of going through the recruitment process, what's important to them? So the question we asked people here was, if you're offered 2 jobs side by side, they're essentially the same job, same money, what would make you say yes to one over another? And these were the 4 things that the people said were, in order of importance. Number 1, keep being kept informed of the process. If you've been for a job in the last couple of years, you probably have applied for something and not heard anything back. And that probably made you feel unhappy and not necessarily a great sense of self-worth, and cross with that company. And so actually, if you can keep people informed throughout the process, it makes a major difference. So if you're going through the hiring process, you don't have to do it, phone everybody or email everybody individually. You can automate stuff, or if you're using a talent portal, you might be able to just have a message on there that shows people where they're at in the process. Things like that make a big difference because people like to know where they're at. And never underestimate the value of a kind no. If you're not hiring somebody, just letting them know, unfortunately been unsuccessful, is a great relief to a lot of people. I know that sounds weird to say, but being told no in a nice way does make a big difference. So being kept informed is number 1 if you're trying to differentiate yourself from another company. Meeting the team, probably obvious. If you go into a place, you see the other people, you can get on well with them. That's a big factor in why they might say yes to you over somebody else. Workplace environment, obviously, if it could be a hole, with rats scurrying around in the corner, it's less attractive. So you might want to put some effort into your workplace environment. But also, you'd be surprised how many people get offered jobs without ever going into the workplace. So if you can make the effort to try and make sure that you have a physical meeting, and that sounds bonkers, that might not be happening, but I guarantee you it does. So if you can get people to come into the workplace, that's really important. important. And then the last one, the interview is passion. This, again, is, for me, one where I think it's free. You know, if you can demonstrate your enthusiasm for why, you know, it's a great place to work, that's a free thing you can do and makes a massive difference in whether that person wants to work with you or not, if you're the hiring manager. So we've already talked a bit about employer brand, so the value proposition, the role definition we've talked about, benchmarking to make sure you're in the right ballpark for salaries. You've got approval, you know, please get approval. Then it's the go-to-market. Okay, so again, you've probably, if you have been looking for work, you may have seen some adverts where essentially it's the job description, it's a list. It's not compelling. It's not something that makes you want to go, yes, I really want to work at this place. But it is an ad. It should be an ad. So think about what your marketing colleagues do. They make things attractive. They make them motivating. When you watch an advert, it doesn't give you a list of the features of a product. It makes you feel a particular way. So your job ads should do the same. Yes, you are going to have in there some of the roles, responsibilities, active, things that this person is actually going to do. But you also want to position it as a great place to work. What impact are you making as an organisation? What have you done to make a difference? And so that should be in there. It should be compelling. It should make somebody want to apply. And again, you can get help on that. Your talent acquisition team or your agent will help with that. And another thing you can do as well is create an information pack. And again, you will have seen some job adverts that provide these. So that's a PDF that you can download that looks like a brochure. It'll tell you about the company, why it's a great place to work, what are they achieving, what are their values, what's involved in the job, you know, what's the process going to be that you're going to go through. All of those things really position it in a really slick way. And you know when somebody's applying for those jobs, they feel it's a bit more special. And actually, it doesn't really take much to do. It's something we do for every job that we handle, is produce this information pack for everybody that's going for an interview, because then it makes them feel engaged, makes them want to be involved, and also it makes it easy for them to actually go and do some research on the company. Now, granted, you do want people who are going to be self-motivated, but the market at the moment is definitely in favour of the hirer. But I guarantee you, over the course of the next 12 months, here I am predicting again, that's going to shift, and we are going to be competing for the best people again. So if you can get these things incorporated into your process now, when you're starting to go through that process, you're going to differentiate your organisation. So next on to the interview. Couple of tips here. So this bit, actually, if you forget everything else I've said, please just remember these bits, right? So schedule the interviews in advance. Get your team together that are going to be involved in the recruitment process and get their diaries aligned at the very beginning. And this serves a number of purposes. Again, I can't stress to you how many times we've been through the recruitment process where there's 5 people involved. First 4 see this candidate, they think they're great, it's all done within a week. And then the 5th person, who just needs to rubber stamp it, is on holiday, has got conflicting diary things. They're not around for 6 weeks. In the meantime, that person's taken another job. So if you can get those diaries aligned at the beginning, that makes a massive difference. Not only that, also, if you're working with a talent acquisition team or an external agent, if they've got a deadline to hit, they will hit it. They will give you the best talent available and get them ready for that deadline. So it really, really helps, scheduling it in advance. You can use technology for that as well. So this one, right, this is the one to remember. Train your hiring managers. So, and by this, what I mean is get them to use the opportunity when they are sitting with this person, whether it be Zoom, Teams, whatever it might be, or face-to-face, explaining why this is a great place to work. What impact is this job going to make in that organisation? What impact does that organisation make when it comes to sustainability? This is your opportunity to really position your company as the one that they walk out of the room thinking, I really want that job. If I don't get that job, I'm going to be really disappointed. And that's what you're aiming for. But your hiring managers are the ones who are going to demonstrate that passion, are going to be the ones that are able to get that message across. Even if they just start the interview saying, hi, before I ask you any questions, I just want to tell you why this is a great place. And that might sound like a really cheesy thing to do, but it will set the tone for that person sitting opposite you to go, yeah, I really want this job. And I'm going to put every effort I've got into making sure that I tell them why I'm great for it. So Train your hiring managers on that, and it'll take 5 minutes. It's free, and it makes a massive difference to whether you get the best people or somebody else. And then we've already talked about the importance of seeing the workplace and meeting the team. If you can squeeze that in, that's brilliant, because it makes, again, massive difference of people saying yes to you over somebody else. And then communicate at every stage. If they're moving from one stage to the next, or they've been, kicked out of the process, which that sounds pretty harsh. Let go out of the process. Then, explain to people what's happened so that they know where they're at. And if they've got other options that they're toying with, then at least they can move on and do something else. It's good to be kind to your potential workforce, because you never know when you might want to attract them in the future. Okay, so offers. You've done all this good stuff. Why will they say yes to you? And for those of you who are similar to me, you'll recognize this logo, C&A. Your offers have got to be compelling and attractive. That doesn't always mean you're smashing it out of the park with the best salaries. I have said that money's important to people at the moment, but it's not always the thing that is going to get somebody to say yes. If you've listened to that person and you've found out that maybe they want to do something in terms of their personal development, or they might need some flexibility because they're a carer, or whatever reason they might need flexibility, if you can incorporate that into your offer, so long as your offer is fair and it's aligned with the market rates, but that person feels that you have listened to them and given them something tailored to them, again, they are much more likely to say yes to you. Now, I've skipped the first one, but I'm going to go back to it. Don't delay the paperwork. And again, this is really dull, right? But it's, again, 3 times this year this has happened, actually. People being verbally offered a job, verbally accept it. Great. Everyone can relax. Job done. Yeah, we're done. We've got that job filled. We'll get the paperwork out in a bit. And in the meantime, weeks have passed. This person's sitting there thinking, I've accepted this job. I've not heard anything else about it. They're still interviewing elsewhere. They get offered something else. And do you know what? The contract lands on their desk. And they go, well, this person's actually serious. These other guys who've offered me this job, but I've accepted, haven't even sent me a contract. I'll just take this other one. People are looking for a degree of security. If you don't give them a contract, they have no security. They don't know you're serious. And it seems a really silly thing to say, but don't delay the paperwork. If you've got the approval in advance, you have the paperwork ready to go as soon as that person says yes. You are much more likely to get them to sign on the dotted line if you have got a contract in front of you. And then stay close to people after they've said yes and they've signed on the dotted line. If you've got team events that are happening, get them along to it. Serves a couple of purposes. 1, it keeps them engaged. 2, also means on their first day they know some people and they're going to settle in a lot quicker. So if you can do that, make sure you've done that. If you haven't got anything booked in, if there's a significant period of time between the offer being accepted and them starting, just put a couple of calls in, if nothing else. Just let them know, yeah, we're really busy, we're looking forward to joining. Any questions? Again, serves 2 purposes. 1, it means that they're engaged, and 2, also if they are having any second thoughts, you've got a chance to address it. And if you get your spidey senses go that this person is going to say, actually, on the last minute, I'm not turning up, you will know from speaking to them, you can pick it up and you can start the process again if you have to behind the scenes, so that if that person doesn't join you, at least you're not starting from scratch again. You've already got a bit of a head start on that. So calls are good. And again, you don't have to do that if you haven't got the time. Get your talent acquisition team or an agent to do that for you. And then, as I said earlier, never underestimate the value of a kind no. And again, I can't see this. And then on day 1, and once they've started, make sure they're welcome. So you've done all that. How do you do it at scale? Because it's, if we're building this massive workforce of 30 million people, you can't do, everything one-to-one every time. So you might have to do this at scale. And you might have heard this expression before: how do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time. And it's the same with hiring people. You hire one person at a time, but there are ways to amplify that and do that at scale. So there's an awful lot of technology out there at the moment that will help you be able to manage the time frames and the communication really well. So your applicant tracking system will help with that. If you are building teams, people don't seem to mention them that often anymore, but actually you can do assessment centres where you can see lots of people at once, and actually you can hire a lot of people at once. And again, if they've met during that process, they're bonded over something, and when they start work, actually you can have a team that's really well bonded from the day 1. And then start thinking about how to build this future pipeline. I know we've said 2050 is not that far away, but some of the jobs that you're going to be thinking about are going to be hired in a year's time, but you might need to start cultivating those relationships early, particularly if they're really tough to hire positions. You might want to know who you want before they even know. But you might also find that if you're looking for lots of the same type of person, you should focus on competencies rather than necessarily at their academic skill set in advance. But speaking of academic skill set, you'd be really surprised how keen universities and colleges are to partner with you. If they know that the students that they're going to be turning out are really employable, they will often look at see how they can tailor their courses to make these people more employable and right for you. So that's a really important thing. And then lastly, don't lose your authenticity. Again, even if you're hiring at scale, making sure that people feel valued through that process and that you're communicating your values as a business are really, really important, so don't lose that. Now, I've spoken very quickly to try and get 30 minutes into 25, and I have 27 seconds left. So I'm just going to close by saying this is really important. It's too important to leave to chance. Make sure that you in this room, because you are all purpose-driven, are the ones that win the war to try and get the best people in, and that they're not going off doing something else that isn't focused on making the impact we need them to make to try and help get to net zero by 2050. So it's too important to get it wrong. Now I've got 2 seconds for questions. Thank you.
I've just realised my microphone. That was an idiotic thing to do. So I'll use these. Is there a 2-second question and a 2-second answer? There's a Kendra, can we run a microphone to the person at the back? I can just see.
Hello.
Very quickly, please.
Thank you very much, Zoe. I actually work for a London university, so I just wanted to flip things on their head very quickly. And as somebody who is trying to upskill the workforce to be taking those jobs, what do you think it is that companies are looking for if you had to give like a top 3?
Yeah, top 3. I will say one thing that I even said to my son, so he's heading off, is to university to do biomedical sciences. And I would say the same for anybody really that's entering education at the moment, is try and make sure, if you're a student, that you incorporate something into your studies around the use of AI, machine learning, or something to do with technology. Because I think that's an undeniable change that is coming, and it's going to impact every single sector. So if you have some competencies where you can use AI properly, or you can do some, you don't even need to code anymore actually, from what I gather, but something where you can actually apply those to your job, that's really, really valuable.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed.
No problems. Thank you. Thank you very much.